Rachel and Pete are possessed. Pete has 2 young boys. How many other victims does Pete have? Pete is 49. R is 33. Heard Pete is his middle name. Pete has a secret on Joni. God is going to expose Pete. Pete was grooming that girl. Has anyone got Pete's records from Australia? Pete had many global trips and was not married. Is Pete's wife involved in the essay? Do Pete and his enabler have kids? How does Rachel trust Pete around her own children? Pete is 42. Sorry, I said 49 earlier. Yes, arrest Pete and take his devices. Rachel needs to protect her kids from her Pete. Rachel, Joni, Pete needs to go to jail. Pete worked a global position. Likely other victims out there. Why does Joni show more loyalty towards Pete over Jonathan? Rachel needs to protect her kids from this Pete person. If Pete was smart, he'd go back to Australia ASAP. Does anyone know if there is more background info on Pete? Pete is a real coward. Wonder how that marriage is going. Makes me wonder what Pete might do to his own child or children. Al, can you explain about podcasters in Australia talking about Pete? I pray the other victims of Pete come forth ASAP and tell their stories. Chris, yes, that's how Pete described Rachel during a Daystar interview. My friend's hot little sister. Pete thinks he got away with it because of the protection of Joni and Rachel. Pete was a keyboard player at Planet Shakers, an Australian ministry. His time there should be investigated. Need private investigator to go to Australia and talk to Pete's neighbors, college friends, family, and others. I want to know if Pete has a record in other countries or areas in his life. Rachel shows pics of Pete's mom on her X and FB. She lives in Australia and visits the US. Little Lamb is not Pete's first victim. He's done this before. That's how he got to be so bold. The question has been on my mind too so much. Why does she favor Pete over her own son? I thought the same thing, it may not have been Pete's first time. Because of his actions at Daystar and the vacation house. I pray daily for the Lamb child and for Jonathan and Susie Lamb. May God expose Pete and may he serve time in prison. Peter was 40 years old and Rachel was 25 when they got married. 15-year difference. He called her my friend's hot little sister. Very, very telling that both couples have banned Pete from their homes or anywhere near their children. Yet Rachel is out there on X without boundaries. One proof is how the child acts and responds when they see the perp. Little Lamb cried and hid in a corner, said Susie, when she saw Pete at Daystar. Peter is 48, and Rachel is 32. There's a 15-year age gap between them, especially prominent when they got married. That's another red flag to me. My friend's hot little sister. I think the right question is, what does Pete know that Joni and Rachel have to protect him to this extent? If this was just greed, they would throw him to the cops. They're scared. What does Pete know is the real question. The answer to this hides why Joni and Rachel are bending over backwards to protect him. Otherwise, they'd throw him to the cops to protect their empire.